Math. When you need help, you use Minute Math.
I'm Sean again, and this is Minute Math, and today we're learning about multiplying, dividing fractions, and mixed numbers, and find each product. So, if I was given these fractions, -5/4 times 1/3, okay? Well, the main thing when we multiply here, we multiply across the numerator and then multiply across the denominator. So, numerator, 5 times 1 is 5. Denominator, 4 times 3 is 12. Okay? Negative times a positive is a negative. Okay? So now we look at it, we have -5/12. Can this fraction simplify anymore? And no, we can't. There's no numbers that both go into 5 and 12. And so our final answer is -5/12. 8/7 times 7/10. Okay? Well, again, with multiplication, we multiply across the numerator and then across the denominator. So we multiply across the numerator. 8 times 7 is 56. And 7 times 10 is 70. Okay? But this fraction we clearly can simplify, right? So both are divided by 2, right? 2 goes in both of these numbers, 1 and down, both even. 70 divided by 2 is 35, okay? And 56 divided by 2, well, that's going to come out to be what? 25 is, so 50 is divided by 2 is 25, 6 divided by 2 is 3, so we have 28 here, 28. Okay, well, can this be broken down any more? And well, actually, I can see 7 goes into each one of these numbers, right? 7 goes into 28 4 times. And 7 goes into 35 5 times, right? And so our final answer here is just 4/5. 4/9 times 7/4. Okay? Well, one thing we can see, of course, we just multiply across the numerator and multiply across the denominator and then simplify. But we see there's a 4 here and a 4 here. Since there's a multiplication going on, this 4 and this 4 both cancel each other out. And we're left with 1s. So now when we multiply across the numerator and multiply across the denominator, it's easier. 1 times 7 is 7, and 9 times 1 is 9. This cannot be simplified anymore, so our final answer is just 7/9. -2/3 times 5/4. Okay? Well, we know that the 4 and 2, right, even though they're diagonal here, they can simplify each other out. 2 and 4 simplify. There's a 1 up here now and a 2 down here. Both are divisible by 2. So now when I multiply across the numerator, then multiply across the denominator. 1 times 5 is 5. 3 times 2 is 6. And a negative times a positive is a negative. So our final answer is just -5/6. -2 times 3/7. Okay? Well, we know that -2 is the same thing as -2/1. Okay? So it's like -2/1. Hopefully you can see that 1 with dots there, right? So with that, we just multiply, like we do all the other fractions, across the numerator and across the denominator. 2 times 3. 2 times 3 is a 6. And a 1, times 7 is a 7. A negative times a positive is a negative, so our final answer is just -6/7. -2 2/3 times 4 1/10. Okay? Well, first thing is I like to write these as improper fractions for multiplication. I always convert it. So 3 times 2 is a 6, right? Plus 2 is 8. So we have 8/3 here, and that's a negative. Times 10 times 4 is 40, plus 1 is 41. 41/10. Okay? So now what I do is before I multiply these out and then bring it back down, I see 10 and 8 are both divisible by 2. Okay, so what I do here, okay, 10 divisible by 2 is a 5, and 8 divisible by 2 is a 4. That, I think, helps make it easier when we're doing our simplification later. Instead of multiplying larger numbers, I try to make them smaller before we multiply, okay? So just like we always do, multiply here, I'll do it across here, multiply across the numerator, all right, 4 times 41, well, 41 times 4, that's 4, and the 4 times 4 is 16. So we have 164 here. Yep. 164 over, and that's a negative, right? Negatives out there. 3 times 5 is 15. Okay? So now we want to bring this back down to a proper fraction. Well, how many times does 15 go into 164? So 15 goes into 164. 15 goes into 16 one time. 1 times 15, 15. Subtract them. 1, bring down the 4. Well, 15 does not go into 14, right? We got nothing there, so it was 0. 0 times 15 is 0. Subtract them, we have 14. Here's our remainder in a sense. So our answer here, we know 10, so this fraction, let's see how we're going to all together, right? This fraction, the negatives out front, 10 is what we have here, but then our remainder, which is 14, over 15, the divisor. And so we have our final answer of negative 10 and 14 over 15. Negative 2 and 1/5 times a negative 1 and 3/4. Okay? I always convert these first thing into an improper fraction. So 5 times 2 is 10 plus 1 is 11. 11/5, don't forget the negative, times 4 times 1 is 4, plus 3 is 7. So we have 7 over 4, and again, let's not forget that negative, okay? Now, the way we have to multiply our fractions here, we multiply across the numerator, then multiply across the denominator. So, numerator, 11 times 7 is 77. 5 times 4 is 20, okay? Well, a negative times a negative is a positive, right? So we have a positive number now. Now, how many times does 20 go into 77, right? Well, 20 goes into 60, right? 63 times, right? So there's 3 there. 3 times 20 goes into 60. And then 77 minus 60, how much is left over there? Well, that's just 17's left over. So we'll be left with a 17 over 20. Right? And we see, right, 3 times 20 equals 60, just so you can see it there. Okay? So we have 3 and 17 over 20, and that is just our final answer. Negative 1 and 1/4 times a 9. Okay? Well, one thing, this is my little trick for something like this, and there's sometimes I like to do this way. So, negative 1 and 1/4 is the same thing as negative 1 plus a negative 1/4. I'm going to multiply that by 9. And what we can see here, I multiply the 9 times the negative 1 is a negative 9. 9 times a negative 1/4 is a negative 9/4. 9 times the 1, right? Across the numerator. Now I'm going to convert this negative 9/4 into a proper fraction. Negative 9 plus, well, 4 goes into 9 2 times, which is 8. So we have negative 2, and there's 1 left over, and 1/4. You can always check your work to see if that fraction worked. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9. There we have it. So now we have negative 9 plus a negative 2 and 1/4. Well, we look to just really add the whole numbers here. And so we have a negative 11 and 1/4, right? Both were negatives. Negative 2 plus negative 9 is negative 11. And 1/4 comes in. So negative 11 and 1/4 is our final answer. Negative 1 and 5/7 times a negative 2 and 1/2. Okay? Well, first thing, I'm going to convert each one of these to a improper fraction. So, 7 times 1 is 7, plus 5 is 12. So we have a negative 12 over 7. Don't forget the negative. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. 5 over 2. Don't forget that negative. All right, so now I'm going to see if I can simplify these fractions. Okay? 2 goes into 12. right? So 1 here, 12 becomes a 6. 12 divided by 2 is a 6, okay? So now let's go multiply across the numerator and across the denominator. Well, 6, you can see here, 6 times 5 is 30, and 7 times 1 is 7, and a negative times a negative is good old positive. So we have positive 30 over 7, okay? So now let's write that as a proper fraction. Well, 7 goes into 30, right? How many times? How many times evenly? Well, 7 goes into 28, right? 4 times. So 4 here, 4 times 7 is 28. Subtract the 2, and we have 2 left over. So what does that mean? What does that mean here? Well, 4 is a whole number out there, 2 being the remainder, the top of the fraction, and 7 still the divisor. 7. So our final answer here is just a positive 4 and 2/7. Negative 2 and 3/8 times 2 and 1/2. All right. Well, first thing, I want to convert each one of these to a improper fraction. 8 times 2, 16, plus 3 is 19. So we have 19 over 8. Keep the negative, multiply it here. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. So we have 5 over 2, 5/2 here. Okay, so now I always try to see if I can simplify anything, but I really can't. So we're actually stuck with these numbers here. We can't simplify it, not that I can see. And let's go multiply this out. Multiply across the numerator and multiply across the denominator. Denominator is easy. 8 times 2 is 16. Okay, numerator, a little more complicated. 19 times 5. If you need help here, 19 times 5. Okay, 5 times 9 is 45. 5 carry the 4. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 4 is 9. So we have 95. So we have 95 here. And a negative times a positive is a negative. So we have negative 95 over 16. But now I need to convert that back down to a proper fraction. Well, how many times does 16 go into 95? Get close to it, okay? So a few ways to go about this and kind of test it, okay? So what I like to do, and this is kind of my little chicken scratch I'll do here on the side, okay, is I'll say, okay, I have 16. All right, 16 times 2. So I have two 16s, right? 16 times 2 gives me 32, okay? So now I have, there's like, how many 16 so far? So 16, how many of them? There's 2 so far to get 32. Then I multiply 32 times 2. Right, 32 times 2 gives me a 64, right? 64. We're not at 95. We're trying to get up to 95. That's a total, right, of 4 16s. Okay, there's 4 16s that we're used to get there. All right, now we're getting close. So I'm like, let's do one more. Let's just add 64 plus 16. Well, that gets me to 80, right? 6 and 4 is 10, carry the 1. 6, 1, and 7, yeah, 80. So we have 80, and that's a total of 5 16s. Now I can see if I add another 16, right, 80 plus 16 gets me to 96, and that's 6 of them, but I've gone too far because I need to get just to 95 or less. So here, 5 is my key number here. 5 goes into 5 times 16, really gives me 80, right? So we have 5 out here, all right, and it's going to be a negative, right? So 5 goes into, so if we want to do like the fraction form here, right, we have 16 that goes into 95. 5 times gets us 80. Subtract the 2, we have 15 left over. 15 over 16. And there we have our final answer, negative 5 and 15 over 16. Negative 1/5 divided by 7/4. Okay? Well, if you're like me, I like to see this as multiplication, not division. So to convert division to multiplication, negative 1/5 times, and I flip the second number, 4 over 7 now. So now I have negative 1/5 times 4 over 7. This I find is easier. Multiply across the numerator and then the denominator. 1 times 4 is 4. 5 times 7 is 35. Keep it a negative, right? Negative times a positive is a negative. So we have negative 4 over 35. Can these numbers simplify? Nope, nothing they can do. They can't simplify anymore. So our final answer is negative 4 over 35. Negative 1/2 divided by 5 over 4. Okay? Well, I don't really like to see division. I always try to convert that to multiplication because I find it easier every single time. So, dividing 5/4 is the same thing as multiplying by 4/5. Okay? So, negative 1/2 times 4/5 now instead of dividing by 5/4. See if we can simplify a little bit. 2 and 4 simplify. There's a 2 up here and there's a 1, right? So, now we just have a 1 over 1 and 2 over 5. And the 1 over 1 is negative. Okay? So let's go multiply that out. Negative 1 times 2 is a 2, and 1 times 5 is a 5, and a negative times a positive is a negative. So we're left with negative 2/5. That cannot be simplified anymore. So negative 2/5 is my final answer. Negative 3 over 2 divided by negative 10 over 7. Okay? Well, if you're like me, I don't really like seeing division. I like to convert that to be multiplication. So to do that, negative 3/2 multiply, just flip the second number. We have a negative 7 over 10. Okay? And really technically, what is that? Negatives down here. It really doesn't matter in the end. Okay? So if negative 10 over 7 is dividing negative 10 over 7. The same thing as multiplying 7 over negative 10. Now, I'm going to see, is there anything I can do to simplify this? Can't simplify any. So, let's see, 3 and 10 and 7 and 2 share a common factor. So, multiply across the numerator, multiply across the denominator. 3 times 7 is a 21. Okay, 21. And then 2 times 10 is a 20. Okay? A negative times a negative is going to be a positive. Okay, so we have a positive here. So positive 21 over 20. I'm okay with that answer. Some people are. Some people also, you might see it like this as a proper fraction. 20 goes into 21 one time with 1 left over. So you might see it like that. 1 and 1 over 20. Either way, both of these are correct answers. And that's our final answer. So 1/2 divided by 8 over 7. 1/2 divided by 8 over 7. Well, dividing by a fraction, I don't like to do. I like to multiply. So 1/2, I convert this to be multiplication. Instead of dividing 8 over 7, multiplying 7 over 8. So now we have 1/2 times 7 over 8. All right, so now let's multiply these out. Multiply across the numerator, multiply across the denominator. 1 times 7, 7. 2 times 8, 16. 7 and 16 have no common factor. We can't simplify this in any way. So our final answer is just 7 over 16. Negative 9 over 5 divided by 2. Okay? So negative 9/5 divided by 2. Well, I don't like division. I prefer multiplication. So negative 9, especially with fractions, negative 9/5 times, convert that divided by 2 to be multiplied by a 1/2. We can do that, right? Because we know that's like 2 over 1 right there, right? Just flip it. Now we just multiply across the numerator and multiply across the denominator, right? 9 times 1 is a 9. 5 times 2 is a 10. Okay? And a negative times a positive is a negative. So, final answer, negative 9 over 10. Negative 3 and 5/9 divided by 3. Okay? A few things I'm going to do in my next step. I want to convert this to a improper fraction, and I don't like dividing. Okay? I'll make it to multiplication. So 9 times 3 is 27, right? 9 times 3 is 27. Plus 5, add 5 more on top of that, is a 32. So 32, that's a 39. Ooh, 132. Careful there. 32 over 9, and we keep that a negative. Now instead of dividing by 3, we know it's 3 over 1, I'll multiply by a 1/3. Okay? So now we have 32 over 9 times a 1/3. Can this simplify in any way? Unfortunately, no. I don't see any way that this can simplify. So we're stuck multiplying across the numerator and multiplying across the denominator, okay? So negative 32 times 1 is 32, and 9 times 3 is 27, and don't forget the negative. Negative times the positive is a negative, all right? So now I want to write this as a proper fraction. I have an improper fraction. I need to write that as a proper fraction, okay? So how to do that? Well, 27, right? 27 goes into 32 one time, 27 times. So 32 minus 27, subtract the 2, and we're left with, well, 2, carry the 1, right? 7 and 12 is 5, and 0 is left over, so we're just 5. 2 minus 2 is 0. So we have 5, right? So we have a 5 here over 27, and don't forget that it was still a negative, so we have a negative. So final answer, negative 5 over 27. Negative 2 divided by negative 3 4/5. Okay? Well, first thing I want to do is I'm going to convert this into or both of these into improper fractions. So negative 2 is the same thing as negative 2 over 1, and divided by here. This one, 5 times 3 is 15 plus 4. All right, 5 times 15 plus 4 we have is 19. 19 over 5, and don't forget that it's a negative. Now, if you're like me, this is the way I like to do it. I hate dividing fractions. I prefer multiplying. So negative 2 over 1 times, multiply it, let's flip that fraction. 5 over negative 19. Okay? So now we have, right, negative 2 over 1 times 5 over negative 19. Well, multiply across the numerator, multiply across the denominator. 2 times 5 is a 10, and 1 times 19 is a 19. Negative times a negative overall is going to be a positive. So our final answer is just positive 10 over 19. 1 over 9 divided by negative 1 1/3. Okay? First thing I like to do here is convert this second number to a improper fraction. So I'll keep the 1/9 here on the left. I'm in division. But an improper fraction, 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. So we have 4/3. Don't forget the negative. Now, I hate dividing fractions. I prefer multiplying fractions. I find it so much easier. So let's convert this to multiplication. 1/9 instead of division, multiply, and we flip the second number. 3 over negative 4. Negative really doesn't matter where it is here. Okay? Now, can we simplify this at all? Well, of course we can. 9 and 3 are both divided by 3, which is 1 up here and 3 left over. Now we have 1/3 times 1 over negative 4. Multiply across the numerator, multiply across the denominator. 1 times 1 is 1. 3 times 4 is 12. And a positive times a negative is a negative. So we have a negative here. Overall, negative 1/12 is our final answer. These numbers, 1 and 6 over 7 divided by, it's a weird division symbol, 5 and 3/4. Okay, first things first, I do not like proper fractions. I like improper fractions when I do multiplication and division. So let's convert that. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 6 is 13. 13 over 7. Division. 4 times 5 is 20, plus 3 is 23. 23 over 4. But then again, if you're like me, I do not like division as well. So I'm going to convert this to multiplication. Well, division within fractions I don't like. 13 over 7 times 4 over 23. Dividing that fraction, 23 over 4, same thing as multiplying 4 over 23. So now we have 13 over 7 times 4 over 23. Can I simplify in any way? Unfortunately, no. So now we have to multiply across the numerator and multiply across the denominator. Okay, so let's go look at that. 13 times 4, we need to do it here, 13 times 4. 4 times 3 is 12, 2 carry the 1. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 1, 5, 52. Denominator, 7 times 23. Well, 23 times 7, let's go with that. 7 times 3 is 21, 1 There's a 2. 7 times 2 is 14, plus 2 is 16. It's 161. 161, and that's basically it. These do not simplify anyway, so our final answer is just 52 over 161, and there we have our final answer. -3 7/10 divided by 2 1/4. Okay? Well, if you're like me, I don't like improper proper fractions with multiplication and division. I prefer improper fractions, so let's convert that. 10 times 3 is 30, plus 7 is 37. Over 10, don't forget the negative, divided by. Okay, that's a weird division symbol, sorry. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9, 9/4. Again, if you're like me, though, I do not like division. All right, I like multiplication, so I convert this to be a multiplication problem. -37 over 10 times, well, 9/4, flip that, we have 4 over 9, okay? Now I try to see, is there any way that I can simplify this? And yeah, I can, right? 10 and 4 are both divisible by 2. Oh, let's put a 2 there. 10 divided by 2 is not 2, but it is 5. Excuse me. All right, so we have 5 there. 5. So 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. So now let's go see if we can multiply this out. Okay. -37 times 2. Oh, off the top of my head, I'm not going to try to do that. 37 times 2, because the chances are I mess it up. 2 times 7 is 14. 4 carry the 1. 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 is a 7. So we have 74 up top, over 5 times 9 is 45, and a negative times a positive is a negative. Okay, so now we have to write this as a proper fraction. We have our answer improper, let's write it as a proper, okay? Well, 45 only goes into 74, we know, one time. So we have one time here, it's going to be negative, but I want to see what's left over. 74 minus 45, subtract the 2. 6, carry the 1, because we're going to do 4 minus 5. 14 minus 5 is a 9. 6 minus 4 is a 2. We got 29. So I got 29 here over 45. And there we have our final answer, -1 and 29 over 45.
Minute Math. When you need help, you use Minute Math. Minute Math. Minute Math. When you need help, you use Minute Math. MinuteMathTutor.com.